Hello everybody, Walt here. Welcome to episode 24 of my Let's Play series for Satisfactory 1.0. In the last episode we built a factory for advanced steel products like motors and heavy modular frames. And today I would like to go into the real high tier stuff, so in other words, turbo motors, supercomputers and pressure conversion cubes. Now with that goal in mind, let's very quickly jump back into the game and have a look where we left off last time. And here we are. So, first things first. As I mentioned in the previous episode, we're running out of space in this area here, so everything that will follow has to be built all the way over there. That means it's also time to move over the hub, which is still somewhere in this location there. Plus some additional stuff I have lying around in its vicinity, like some containers and a MAM. All of which is no longer needed over here, since I only plan on coming back here once, and that is when I'm upgrading all of the Mark 5 belts to Mark 6, or at least those that need it. So, but as I was saying, all of this here now needs to be moved over to the crater. And there we go. Now with that done, it's time for the two train stations, one for the power plant and one for the aluminum facility in this general area over here. So for that, let's leave a little bit of distance to this one here. So 1, 2, 3. And it needs to be at the proper height, which is that one there. So yeah, that might be the spot to start with this. So first we need the end segment. And that needs to be aligned. Okay, that's looking good. Then I have one for the engine. And come on. This happens every single time, huh? And then, as I was saying, 3 for cargo. And then another end segment. And yeah, that fit in perfectly. Okay, that is looking very good indeed. Now, which direction do I want my train to go through this? Yeah, coming in from over there. So that means I have, if I go into transport, my train station, this way around. There. Then the empty platform. And let's check. Of course, it's sticking out. I don't know what. I'm going to put in a proper floor anyway, so it's not... No, I'm going to fix that. That is just a simple rotation away, and then it's working as intended again. Okay, so then we have our freight platforms. So one here, and then the next one, and then the last one for this one. And then our empty platform again. And of course it's the wrong way around. I thought I had rotated this. Okay, now it's correct again. Good. Then, next up, we do need the unloaders. 1, 2, 3. And let's actually start with the next train station already. 3, 4, and 5. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. End segment while I'm already here. And then end segment. And that should also work. Then let's grab the train station, put that around. Empty platform. Yep. Then we have the freight platforms. And then the empty platform. And that is looking pretty good. Okay, now let me very quickly finish up with this train station here. So the power connections, and the missing floor segments, and the various smaller connections. And of course, the railways, which will go from over here, 180, and then through the middle, same here. So I will have a junction somewhere here, and just like in this here. Now, with the train station done, it's time to worry about connecting it to the actual railway system. And I already started going up with a ramp around here. And I'm not entirely sure yet whether I go through this or this stone arch, but the general idea is to go through one of those and then go into the already existing railway line over here. So somewhere in this direction we have the T-junction, which connects the aluminium facility with the power plant. And currently the railways are going along the southern border to my previous main location. And I'm just going to reroute those all and get rid of the connection at the bottom there. And that's the last missing railway in place, which means now it's time for the trains. And since I haven't prepared any trains in the other locations, I can just build them here and send them off from this location here. So for that we are going to start with an electric locomotive, followed by 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 freight cars. Then this one here, since it's the longer one, will go to the power plant. And then we have the next one, which will go over here and has only 3 of those. And by the way, I also set all of those here to unloading. So yeah, the materials are actually unloaded over here. But as I was about to do, let's set the timetable. So this is the aluminium. And then turn on. And that's the trains done. Now let's check. Okay, it has reached the T-junction. That means there's nothing too steep in this vicinity here, since this is the longer train. Which, if any of the trains would have an issue, it would be this one here. So, anyway, let's continue. Next up is in the factory for today, which will go alongside the train station. And for that I need an 8 by 24 foundation sized area prepared. And there we go. The foundation is now in place. I've also already put in the front wall, even with an entrance and a priority power switch. I also already included an awesome sink over here, since there will be some stuff that needs to be gotten rid of. And as you can see, I also already started on the roadworks. And with all of that in place, it's time for the very first segment in here, or module in here. And that is actually a somewhat unique blueprint, and that is the unpackager here. So that one will have to go, and just need to make sure I put this the right way around. Yeah, that should be the correct way, and now it's also in the correct spot. And what this will do, as you can see, is pretty obvious. Those are 2 packagers, or to be more precise, unpackagers, since they unpackage the packaged fuel, which comes from the power plant. And that is also where the awesome thing here comes into play, since I only need the fuel and I don't need the empty canisters. So let's very quickly connect this to the train station and the awesome sink. And a few minutes later, this is now properly connected, except for the outgoing fuel pipe, which means this is currently backing up. But that will rectify itself pretty soon. So, next up on the agenda, we have a double blender module, which I just need to rotate around a little bit. And then it needs to be moved in the correct spot, which is right there. So, and now what am I going to produce there? Well, pretty simple. These here are going to produce 100 nitric acid per minute. which means that one of these here is going to run at only 1/3, and the others at full capacity. Okay, so that now needs to be connected, and for that I need the nitrogen gas, so I'm just going to connect one of my two pipes, the water pipe, and then the iron plates. And the iron plates actually are on a sushi belt. So I have two options. Option one is running the sushi belt to somewhere over here, then split off with a smart splitter. And the second option would be replacing the splitters in here with smart splitters and then running the sushi belt directly through. But I think I'm going with the smart splitter here. And yeah, that is a bit more ordered and a bit more straightforward. Yeah, that is exactly what I'm going to do over here. And now we also have nitric acid available over here. I did find a little bit of an issue with this blueprint though. For some reason this and this conveyor lift here didn't connect to the blender. I am not sure why, but that is now fixed in the blueprint. Although I didn't check whether the second one is also affected or not. So yeah, there might be still an issue in the blueprint. We'll see how that turns out for us. Anyway, let's continue. And the next step is actually unlocking a couple recipes, since they are now going to be required. So, let's go through this. The first one I'm going to need is the heat fused frame, which greatly speeds up the production of those fused frames. The only real downside is that you need the nitric acid and not just nitrogen, but overall I think it's more efficient. Then, let's continue. I am also going to need later on the radio control system, which again is a bit more efficient resource-wise. Then we have the OC supercomputer, which is the one I'm going to use. Then, let's see. Let's go from the top. The cooling device, similar story as before. Again, more efficient. And then there should be at least one more I need. Yep, the heat exchanger, again, more efficient, uses less aluminium than the standard recipe. And that is pretty much all of those. So, yeah, let's grab a few more of the unnecessary recipes. So since I'm not going into nuclear fuel anyway, I might as well grab either of those. Doesn't make much of a difference, although most of those recipes here are quite good. Ah, the turboelectric motor is the one I'm also going to need today. So that is one I'm going to grab. This one here I'm not going to make use of, since it needs the high-speed connectors, which is rather expensive. And then we have the superstate computer, which is the recipe I'm not going to use, since you need batteries, and I don't want to bother with those. Then let's grab that molded beam here. If you have concrete, this might be a good recipe, but otherwise there's no real need for that. And heavy flexible frames. It's a bit of a waste to use rubber just to boost production speed. And yeah, now let's start with the research again. And let's get building. So, the next module is going to be another blender module. And this is where we're going to use the heat fused frames. So, over here. And over there. And the same in those two locations. And as you can see, they will need the nitric acid and the fuel from before. I will also need the aluminium ingots from the train station, and then the heavy modular frames, which are on one of my sushi belts again. So, similar story as before, just with slightly different connections. And now we also have fused modular frames available en masse, which is very nice indeed. I did find one more issue with my blueprint for the double blender though. Aside of the lifts not connecting to the bottom blenders, the output here is also going in the wrong direction, or was. I fixed it over there. I left it here since it's not really needed, and it's also fixed in the blueprint already. I did find one more, well, misconception. I thought one of the recipes used later on here were done in the manufacturer, but it's only the assembler, so I shuffled things around a bit, and now the build will be a bit shorter than I originally thought. Yeah, and with that said, let's get started over here with assembler module. And let's just make sure this is in the correct spot. Yep, that looks good. Now, of this module, I'm only going to need the first half. So the last 4 assemblers will have to be removed, and the other ones are going to produce, and this is actually a standard recipe, the electromagnetic rod. So let's just quickly paste that in there, and one of these will run at, similar to what I did with the nitric acid, about 1/3. And yeah, so I think the status in the AI limiters are actually on the same sushi belt, so that shouldn't be much of an issue. And yeah, the rest is just getting rid of the unnecessary parts and just connecting to the various grids. So a few minutes later, this is all now properly connected, but unfortunately not running at full tilt since, well, the production of the AI limiters and the status is kind of throttled currently with the Mark V belts. They would need actually Mark VI belts to run at full tilt. So I guess that is going to be a recurrent theme from now on. Nevertheless, let's continue with one more of those big assembler modules. And that one needs to go in this spot here. And over here, we are going to produce the earlier unlocked heat exchangers. And I only need 5 assemblers for that, so the last 2 will be removed, and then these 2 here will be underclocked to 50%. And concerning the raw materials, well, they only need the aluminum casings from the train station and the rubber, which is also on its own belt, so I don't have to worry about any kind of sushi belts. And here we go. So, next up on the agenda is a manufacturer module, which needs to go over here and then as close as I can, and it looks like I will have to move the floor manually a bit and also the ceiling, but for the most part that fits quite nicely. Yeah, that should work. Okay, now what am I going to produce over here? Well, this is going to produce SAM fluctuators at 50%, as we'll do the one at the top there, and yeah, the reanimated SAM is on a sushi belt, wire and steel pipe as well. I think I actually need all 3 different sushi belts for that. Yeah, that is going to be a little bit more tricky over there, but for the most part, this is pretty straightforward. And that's the SAM fluctuators done. I do have to say though that I kinda underestimated how much I had to fiddle around with those belt systems here to avoid clipping, but I managed it for the most part. This, by the way, is just the return line to my temporary storage system over there. That will obviously be removed at a later point. So, anyway, let's continue on. And the next step are a couple of modules. So let's grab the big manufacturer modules. And that, I guess, needs to be moved a little bit. Yep, that looks good. So that's one. And then a second one, and then finally a third one. And that's all I need in this row. And yeah, as I imagined, I can shorten this, at least in this row, by 2. I'm not going to do that yet, though, since I'm not 100% sure I have calculated the length of the first row correctly. Nevertheless, what am I going to produce over here? Well, of those 12 manufacturers, the first 10... which means I actually need to split them over here. So I'm not accidentally running one into the other. So the first 10 are going to use the radio control system alternate recipe. Crystal oscillators, circuit boards, aluminum casing and rubber. Those are all from sushi belt. The aluminum casing is again overflow from further to the right, and the rubber is the same. And then the last one is going to be the turboelectric motor, which uses, well, motors from the sushi belt. The radio control units we're going to produce electromagnetic rods from further to the right, and the rotors again from the sushi belt. And that is going to be the same at the top there. So 10 for the radio control units and then 2 for the turbo motors. And once again, it looks like we have some supply issues with the rotors and the crystal oscillators. So maybe I'm going to speedrun the Mark 6 belts in the next episode to get around that issue. But anyway, let's continue over here. And for that we're going to need a big blender module as a start, which goes right there. And then I need a smaller blender module, which goes right there. And let's see. Yeah, that should actually work perfectly fine if I were to grab a big assembler module and place that there. That would align perfectly, except for the height, obviously. So that should work out. Now, what am I going to produce over here? Well, this is going to produce the cooling device, which uses motors to reduce the amount of nitrogen gas required. So this is where we are going to need the second pipe of nitrogen gas. And the motors I'm going to grab from further along. I already used them for the turbo motors, and the heatsink is already being produced in the second row there, so that is not too much of an issue at all. And the last two once again need to be underclocked to 50% since I only need 5 blenders worth of cooling devices. And here we go. Okay, so now with the cooling devices done, it's time for the last big module here, which is a big assembler module, as I already showed you before. And actually need to put this in the correct height. So let's try this again. That seems to be the correct orientation. And then that is in place. Yeah, that is looking pretty decent. Now, what am I going to produce over here? Let's start at the back there. The last two are going to produce the OC supercomputers, which are a pretty simple recipe, as you can see, with them being an assembler recipe. And the other 6 are going to produce the pressure conversion cube, if I can find it at least. Down there. Now, this one here doesn't even have any kind of alternate recipe, so I am forced to use that specific recipe. And yeah, now the components are all being produced over here already. Same for this one here, so this is just an interconnection inside of all of this. And when I'm done with that, I might as well finish with shortening this foundation and adding the outer walls to all of this here. And about half an hour later, we're now finally done with this factory here. We are now producing all of the high tier stuff I had planned for today. But we are not entirely done yet though, since at the moment all of those factory lines here don't lead anywhere, so that needs to be changed ASAP. And I did the calculations and it's pretty simple. I can just collect all of the output of this factory line here, merge it together onto one sushi belt, which then again can merge with the main sushi belt from previously, which now has some space due to the resources that are used up over here. And that also means I need to expand this storage system at the back there so I can handle the new materials and can actually make use of them for future building projects. And there we go, the new items are now being merged onto the old sushi belt, which, as you can see, has enough space left for the few items in there. All of that is obviously moved to the now expanded storage system over here, which I think is still filling up. Of course the RCUs are already full, but the other ones still take a little bit longer. So are still filling up, and what I'm not going to put into Dimension Depot are the pressure conversion cubes. Those are only needed for the space elevator parts and not to build anything. So that is looking good, and that brings me to the last step for today, which is just putting in the road around this whole factory building here. And a few minutes later, this is now also finally done. And yeah, I think this is a good point to stop with the episode here. We are now producing all of the high tier stuff we can, except for the space elevator parts, obviously, which is going to be the focus point for the next episode. And that brings us to the actual end of this episode here. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share and comment. It really helps with the algorithm. Independent of that, I wish you a nice day, and well, see ya.